we're going to bring up, this is a gentleman who joined us recently. He has done some wonderful stories, and I'm glad he's here tonight. Everyone, let's have a big round of applause for Mr. Jerry Dahlgren.
You know, in high school, my nickname was 2219. When I was young, and I'm not talking 40 or 30 or 20, I'm talking 10 years old, I decided I needed to have my own television show. Now, I'm not talking about an appliance box with a hole cut in it and doing things for the neighbor kids. I wanted a real show. I was a great admirer of Addie Bobkins, who did a children's show in the Portland, Oregon market where they showed cartoons and people dressed up as characters. And it seemed to me that a kid's show ought to be hosted by a kid, i.e. me. So I wrote a letter to that effect to the producer of the Addie Bobkins show, Mr. Bill Riggs. I believe I even came up with a stage name, Skippy Lee. At least it seemed like a good name at the time. Several weeks later, to my surprise, I got a reply. They actually liked my idea and wanted me to come to the studios. Well, I hadn't expected this, so I figured I'm going to have to tell my parents. After all, I'm going to need a ride. And I generally keep my parents on a need-to-know basis, even at 10. The only problem was that despite the fact that I wanted my own TV show and that I enjoy doing stand-up comedy and reading stories in front of groups of people, I am painfully shy and insecure. I was as a kid, and I am pretty much the same as an adult. So not knowing what exactly was in store for me, I boned up on riddles, such as, what is a clumsy person on a bus? A Laplander. Remember, I was 10. Now this was a long time ago, so my memory is not perfect, but I recall being put in the Addie Bobkins audience, which was a bleacher-type setting on stage. The producer had indicated that Addie would come back before the show and work something out. He never showed, however. So on the set, he talked to the kids, before the show started, and when I said my name, he said something like, "Oh yeah, you're the kid I'm supposed to talk to." So when it came time for the show, came time in the show for the audience banter, he came to me and asked me several questions, which I thought I handled gracefully. One was something about what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said something like I wanted to be a nut, like you. At 10, to me this seemed pretty hilarious. Then he asked me to act like a nut for 60 seconds. This would have been the time to bring up my riddles, but instead my shyness took over and I froze and I did nothing for the longest 60 seconds of my life. So that was that. My family was very supportive and mad at Addie Bobkins for not having to come back to work something out, and blamed him completely for my failure. I knew, though, that I blew it, that what he asked was reasonable, and that I was not ready for my own show. This, I'm sure, is not exactly how I verbalized it, but it is an accurate description of my feelings. My exact words were probably more like, "Oh, poopy."
Jerry Dahlgren, ladies and gentlemen.